So Don, we were talking about Salvador Dali and your experience of drawing him. Now this was a drawing you did of Salvador Dali, isn't that correct?
Yes, in New York. I'd never met him. The sitting was arranged by Henry Geldzahler, who was then curator at the Metropolitan Museum in New York. And I went to the St. Regis where Dali was staying. And I expected I'd be invited up to the room to do the sitting in his apartment. And to my surprise, he came down in the elevator. And we shook hands in the lobby. And then he led me into the King Cole room, the bar at the St. Regis Hotel. And it's a half arena-shaped bar. And he took me right down to the lowest rung, the table at which we could be seen by everybody else in the bar. Oh. And he said, "We work here." Mm. And
added pressure.
You see, that was his price for the sitting. If he, the distinguished artist, was going to sit for an upstart whom he'd probably never even heard of, then he would use the occasion to make some publicity for himself, to make a happening at the St. Regis Hotel.
Was he dressed with all the regalia normally associated with?
He was beautifully dressed with his mustache curled out to here, looking every inch the eccentric
that he
painter.
Was.
And the bar was so dark that when I set up my drawing board and put a sheet of white paper on it, I could hardly see the white paper, let alone Dali himself. And I thought, my God, I'll never be able to do this. And I started in my mind making excuses how I would get out of it. I would say, "Oh, forgive me, I just can't work today," or "I feel ill," or something or other. While such ideas were going on in my head, I started the drawing, and Dali fastened onto me these eyes, these staring eyes, and it was almost like being hypnotized by Svengali, as though I were Trilby. He was willing me to do the portrait of him.
Almost like a
by
dare,
his
or
hypnotic gaze. Yeah. And he was perfectly still. And with this commanding stare that he gave me, I couldn't not do the drawing. And because he never moved a hair's breadth while we worked, I was able to do a perfectly good picture of him, which surprised him as well as me.
Incredible.
He even signed and dated the drawing when I asked him to. So
he did it under his terms, but he was extremely cooperative, understood the process, and gave you what you needed at the end, all said and done.
Yes.
Wow.
So forever after, I never felt that I could refuse the chance to draw a famous person, even though the situation looked hopeless. I would always give it a shot.
Now, it must have given you quite a bit of confidence then.
An awful lot of confidence in celebrity chasing.
Yes.
And a portrait artist is obligated to do pictures of recognizable people, because how else can the general public know whether or not the artist can get a good likeness?
Right, sure.
Unless they recognize the subject.
Right, absolutely.
And I did my share of celebrity chasing.
You're right. Recently, we got the news that the great painter Lucian Freud has moved on ahead of us. He was a huge influence on me. I love his work, and you had the opportunity to, was it a drawing or was it a painting?
It was a drawing I did of him in 1970. Chris and Francis Bacon were good friends. They met in the late 40s, and so every time Chris and I went to London, Chris called up Bacon and we met him. And we were both very fond of him. He was, I think, the most fascinating artist,
Francis
one of
Bacon
the most
was.
fascinating I've met. He was very articulate, and of course he was magnificent looking. He had one of the great faces.
Unique.
And he was a powerful influence on me, always as an artist. And so it was a great thrill for me to get a sitting with him. And in fact, he sat for me twice.
Francis Bacon
Once,
did.
yes, once in 1961, and then again in 1970.
Was this in London or was
It was in London and in his
Studio?
own studio.
Oh, that's even better.
Yes, that was a real occasion
Was
for
it
me.
chaos and like we see in all the pictures? Just madness in the
well,
studio, stuff everywhere?
In one corner of this one-room studio was a great heap of rubbish in which old paint tubes and old napkins and wound-up torn paper, everything was just thrown on this heap in the corner, which had been there so long it had a layer of dust on it. On the easel in the middle of the room was a big oil painting which was absolutely pristine. It was a recent picture, and it had just that gloss of absolute fresh newness to it. And it just gleamed in the middle of this disarray.
What a
and
contradiction.
and that made it all the more impressive.
So you met Lucian Freud through the
Yes,
relationship with
at
Francis
that
Bacon?
time, this was 1970, and he and Lucian Freud were best friends.
No.
And often Lucian joined us when we had dinner with Francis. So,
Wow.
and after I'd done the sitting with Francis, I asked Lucian if he would sit, and he agreed. And we did it in this little one-room studio of his in London. And it was just a bare one-room studio. It was at night, and there was just one light bulb hanging from the center of the ceiling. And that was all the illumination I had. But again, like Dali, he sat so still, with such concentration, and with these penetrating eyes looking at me, that it didn't matter that the light was inadequate. I could do a drawing, and I only did the one drawing, and I think it's a good one. I think it's very
I
likely.
agree. I've seen it. Yeah, I agree.